You're watching TelecomTV from the MEF17 event in Orlando. And I'm joined now by Marc Halbfinger, who is CEO of PCCW Global. Marc, thanks for speaking with us on TelecomTV again.
Good to see you again, Guy.
First of all, how's business? How is the demand? What are you seeing for carrier services, in particular these agile, on-demand services that we're talking about so much within MEF?
First of all, business for us at PCCW Global in 2016 and 2017 has been quite stable and positive. We're in the fourth quarter of the year and we're seeing a lot of demand for services, certainly. Enterprises always want more bandwidth at lower prices. They also want an introduction of additional applications that make sense over and on top of the bandwidth. And we're doing our best to accommodate all of that. One of the things that we've done recently is to acquire the assets, people, brand, and intellectual property of a company called Console Connect, and we'll be retaining parts of that brand in our operating environment. Console Connect is designed to provide really a one-click capability of network to cloud, and we'll be further growing that capability to a network-to-network environment and perhaps also cloud-to-network capability.
On-demand dynamic services today, probably quite a small percentage of overall business and revenue for carriers, but we're projecting them to grow. As they do so, do we have to sort of realign our businesses? Is there a risk of cannibalization of some of the legacy services?
Always a risk of cannibalization. That's the nature of the business. But I think to avoid customer request and demand for efficient use of the resource that they acquire would be to bury our head in the sand. We are working with other service providers now to develop capability even on a wholesale layer to see how a network-to-network interconnect could perhaps facilitate bandwidth on demand.
So I understand that you're also the current chairman of the GLF.
That's right. The GLF is the Global Leaders Forum. It's a body which brings together many of the decision makers in the wholesale service provider side for commercial elements of wholesale settlement. Historically, the legacy structure was dealing with voice minutes and data services. Now, GLF is focusing on what are the next generation services that will need to be settled for, what are the commercial parameters in which that's done. Subcommittee of the GLF now is focusing on a test case of bandwidth on demand. And in order to do that, they're working together with MEF. We're working closely with Kevin Vachon and his team at MEF in order to assure that both the GLF and MEF are aligned in delivering a sensible approach, not just technically, but also commercially in the wholesale space amongst service providers.
Is this an example of the importance of these inter-organizational relationships and getting us all to work more as a community?
I think so. I think that MEF in that regard has done an outstanding job in helping articulate what is a common framework that we can all be working for interoperability, for a common set of standards, not just technically, but commercially as well. Importantly, I think other entities that are involved in setting standards or creating environments in the open source space can leverage the work that's done by MEF and its member parties to assure that there is a common ground and that not everyone is working in different directions at different times. So in that regard, I think quite valuable what's happening in MEF.
How significant is the MEF's announcement at this event of its MEF 3.0 framework?
The 3.0 framework is the next generation, certainly, of certification. It's the next view of what a network that is driven through software architecture, for lack of a better word, perhaps the softwareization of a carrier is supposed to look like, and how a service provider delivers services that are understood by the end user, but importantly, the new 3.0 reference architecture and accreditation capability refers also to inter-network and intra-network capability, which is the beginnings of getting common ground in the wholesale space of platforms. Envision, if you will, an opportunity to perhaps expose back-end systems at the OSS side in a carrier's environment to an end user or to another service provider. If we borrow from the airline industry, the ability to take an e-ticket and to provision boarding passes on capacity in an airplane from one carrier to another, I think these are common areas that the ICT service provider community needs to be looking at, and MEF, I think, is doing an outstanding job in articulating that, and 3.0 is taking us very far down that road.
So this feeds into the LSO APIs for intercarrier orchestration of services.
So LSO APIs after the 2.0 reference architecture, about a year and a half ago, MEF came out with the LSO guidelines, if you remember reference paper 55. And now I think 3.0 is taking what had been achieved well in 2.0, taking the understandings associated with the LSO, which was taking orchestration and explaining to service providers that software is going to meet the physical network. And what is the methodology for software to meet the physical network, and what are the attributes technically and hopefully now also commercially for that structure. 3.0 now also articulates intercarrier relationships. What would be the appropriate guidelines for technical interfaces between and among different service providers, so one environment's platform can be used by another's. Imagine spinning up a virtual machine as a customer of PCCW Global's on a partner network, perhaps Telecom Italia Sparkle or PLDT, and we want to use capacity in that environment structure. What is the technical reference points for doing that? And then commercially, how would we settle for the utilization of capacity on that other infrastructure?
So as we start looking at and offering these agile services, and we're looking at SDN, NFV, and on-demand, and SD-WAN, is this helping you as a carrier to better understand your customers? Have you got a kind of better feedback mechanism? Customer
behavior is changing. Customers are becoming increasingly more IT aware, software aware, less patient for the old style of quoting for capacity or cross-connect and provisioning. They want things on demand and immediately. The softwareization, particularly the ability to go to virtualization of infrastructure. Not SD-WAN is the infrastructure development, but I think virtualization of elements on the network is what's making things much more easily deployable for end users. An end user's ability to virtualize an instance of any type of device or application is becoming critical today in understanding what customers want, and service providers need to be ready to accommodate that demand in the way a customer wants it, both from a quality point of view, a service point of view, and from a pricing perspective as well.
Well, Marc, great insight as ever. Thank you very much for joining us on TelecomTV.
Good to see you again. Thank you very much.